It's come out of nowhere, but it's understandable. He gave the reasons why he wants to go. He's tired. He's been there a long time, and he's the longest-serving member of the parliament. What's interesting to look at his position today, when I first met him in 2013, when he was the opposition leader up against Colin Barnett, and there's a long history of boom-bust in the economic cycle in Western Australia, and it coincides with politics. When he was the first election as opposition leader in 2013, it was the boom. Colin Barnett won an easy victory. Labor looked like he needed a 10% swing in the next election to win office. In that next term, there was one attempt to try and replace him with Steve Smith as opposition leader, so there were some doubts within the party. But by the time the 2017 election, the boom had ended and the bust was going on, and Labor romped home at that election with a swing of about 12%. What's more remarkable in 2021 is it doubled that margin. There's been a 25% swing to Labor over 2 elections. So a quarter of Western Australians have switched from one side of politics to the other over the last decade, which is just the most extraordinary shift. Western Australia has never been a natural home for the Labor Party. It's alternated in power at state level, but it's never done well at federal elections. The last federal election was the best result Labor's had in WA at a federal election in decades. And the reason the Albanese government has a majority is because of Mark McGowan and the success of the Western Australian government. Now, some of that is to do with the success of the government, the economy. There's also issues to do with the fact that the opposition took the wrong stance on the closure of the state borders at the time. Mark McGowan took a strong stand, closed the border. That was backed overwhelmingly by Western Australians. And the last state election, 60% of the first preference vote, 70% two-party preferred.
We have to leave it there for now because we are saying goodbye to viewers on ABC TV. You can watch on ABC News Channel. Bye for now. So you were saying, Anthony, and there were doubts over Mark McGowan's leadership in the early days.
Yeah, there was an attempt. I mean, at one stage there was an attempt from outside of the party caucus to bring in Steve Smith. That was rejected by his parliamentary colleagues, and so Steve Smith just withdrew. But by the time of the 2017 election, the economic cycle had moved. Labor, which has been an issue in the last 2 decades in Western Australia, going back 4 decades in Western Australia, public transport in Perth. And Labor's taken a very strong stand on building new railways, and they've continued that, and that's always been an issue which has worked in Labor's favourite state elections over there. The turnaround of the economy, the negotiation of a new GST deal, which has improved the Western Australian balance sheet even further. The boom has continued. The state did well during the lockdown period. Look, everything that he's touched has worked out well. They finally they got a long-standing Labor Party proposal to reform the state's upper house, and the next election will elect the state's upper house from a statewide electorate for the first time, rather than a sort of a system which was tilted towards the country. So there's a lot of things which the Labor Party's always wanted to do, and he's finally managed to deliver it for them. And as I said, I remember doing the federal election. It was unclear till after 8 o'clock on election night that Labor would get a majority. And then the Western Australian results came in, and you saw seat after seat after seat go down. And Anthony Albanese ended up with a 2-3 seat majority. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but they ended up with a very small majority, and that's built entirely on Western Australia. That the swing in Western Australia was big to Labor. And it's left the Liberal Party and the National Party in Western Australia in a problem. I mean, at the moment, the National Party holds the position of opposition leader because the Liberals only won 2 seats at the last election. Mark McGowan holds his own seat with a margin of 37%. The coalition needed a swing of 25% to win the next election. So handing over now, he's handing a substantial legacy over to whoever replaces him. Now, you can't always say they can't lose. I mean, I do remember Campbell Newman losing an election despite a record majority. But given the state that the Liberal and Nationals are in Western Australia and the boom of the economy, it seems almost a foregone conclusion that Labor will win the next election. It's a matter of by how far. Of course, there will be a fight over. The Liberals will be trying to recover, but there'll be a federal election before then, so there'll obviously be pressure to try and keep the Labor vote up in Western Australia for the federal election. So the state and federal legacies of Mark McGowan. But I must say, having met him in 2013, another thing, anyone in 2013 who met him when he was first election as opposition leader would think that a decade later he would be so dominant across Western Australia. He seemed like a very mild man at the time, and he turned out to be a bit of a juggernaut politically.